Hello and welcome. As a careful observer of human behaviors and actions, it did not take me time to notice that Americans try as much as possible to avoid touching people, even people they know very well. Touching people could get someone into trouble in the United States. In contrast to not touching people, Americans like to hug people, especially those they know very well, to express pleasantries, show appreciations, show empathy, and so on. If you plan to travel to the United States for the first time, this podcast must be listened by you to understand some things you may try to avoid. Similarly, if you are a new immigrant into the United States, this podcast is a must listen for you. For US citizens or residents, please take some time to listen to this podcast because we will rely on you to help us make sense of some actions that is peculiar to Americans for the benefit of others. So, whatever is your status in the US, this podcast is a must listen, and we like talking to regular folks for some answers. If you need an expert in social or societal issues, we will invite an expert to give us an expert analysis of some of the issues under discussions. Otherwise, our preference is to hear from regular folks to get their perspective. At the end of the exploration of the issue or topic under discussion, I will provide my logic or my take on the issue to see if we can get a resolution or to find out why the issue had persisted or remained unresolvable. Please note that my logic or take is based on common sense and not based on expert knowledge. So let's dive deep into the discussion. Today's discussion is about touching people and honking your vehicle horn at another vehicle and why Americans do not touch people in so many situations and do not honk at another vehicle. Americans are generally good people and always want to help people in very difficult situations, even if it means risking their own lives. When they do that, they are called heroes, irrespective of how small the heroic act is. And many media outlets and the public will invite them to appear on their show for the heroic act's approval and praises. Sometimes Americans lose their lives while carrying out the heroic act, and the family members are invited to the media and praised by the public on behalf of the hero who had just passed. People from other countries do the same, but I am not sure that the word hero is applied to all the situations in other countries as it is in America. In some cases, other countries may use other praise languages such as Good Samaritan or something similar. I used to make a joke that said that if there is one day set aside to honor all American heroes who have at one time in their lives did the heroic act and called the hero, the streets across the US will be filled with people who are called heroes. And that's a good thing. There's, however, something that you don't do in America, or put it mildly, something you must try to avoid, but other countries do it very frequently as an act of kindness or good Samaritan act. Let's look into some situations. So, touching people in America is a risky act that could get you into severe trouble, even though the touch could be a gesture to remind the touched of an imminent adverse outcome. For example, a young woman was waiting in the airplane boarding area for her flight to start boarding when she suddenly fell asleep. The boarding began, and by the time all passengers had boarded the flight, the woman was still sleeping. Many passengers looked at her while boarding their flights, but were afraid to touch her and wake her up. One of the passengers waiting for another flight moved close to her and started calling at her, Ma'am, ma'am, your flight has boarded, but was scared to touch the sleeping passenger. Unfortunately, the passenger missed her flight. The question is, why is Americans afraid of touching people? To knock them out of a minor predicament, but they could move heaven and earth to rescue a person from the most difficult situations, such as someone in a cave, in the ocean, in sinkholes, in the mountains, in the wild, and the list goes on. Are Americans allergic to touch? Even in the most benign setting, such as during group discussions in the office, in schools, in dining table, on television, on playground, etc. People try to avoid touching each other. And in some very few instances, when someone touches another, you could feel the scare in the faces of all observers as though an abomination has been committed. In other countries, a kind person or a good Samaritan will almost always touch you to wake you up to remind you that your flight has started boarding. And the awakened passenger will always show gratitude. If you are an American who is sleeping and your flight was boarding, do you want someone to touch you and wake you up, or do you not? If not, we would like to know why. If yes, we will also want to know why. In the same token, if you are an American and you see a person sleeping and about to miss his or her flight, would you touch the person? If not, why are you afraid? And if yes, why are you different from other Americans who will not touch anybody? It is my understanding that touching people, especially men touching women, could be viewed as some form of misconduct, but stretching it as far as not touching to remind a person about his or her missing flight does not seem to explain the culture of do not touch. Send us your answers to above questions, and we could accommodate your response in our next episode if time permits. We would like to answer, we would like answers from both men and women, and we will be glad to invite you for further discussion on this topic in our next episode. Now, here's my logic or my take. If my flight is boarding and I am sleeping, please touch me to wake me up. I think I might even consider writing a bold notice and stick it to my chest, stating, "Please touch me to wake me up if my flight is boarding." But if I don't put a notice, I'll be glad to be touched to wake up and not miss my flight. If you are new to America, please be careful before you touch people to avoid touching people who might react adversely against the touch. The point is that missing a flight just because you are sleeping at the gate adds another layer of cost and time and burden on your travel schedules. As you know, humans are social beings, and communal living and assistance makes life easy and worth living. It is abnormal to allow a fellow human to suffer needlessly when a little kindness and assistance is readily available. Let's stick to the airport related issue for a moment. There are situations where Americans are very good that it surprises me, but not so much so by people from other countries. If you're running late and your flight is about to board or the gate is about to be closed and you are at the back of the TSA line, if you let any American know, he or she will make way for you to fast track to the first in line. The gesture is almost always the same for many, if not all, Americans. I've seen some people from other countries, but not all, decline to help people whose flights are boarding to fast track to the front of the line, even though they have some hours to spare. I'm wondering why some people indulge in act of kindness in one situation and not in another. If you're one of those who cannot provide these kind gestures to a passenger whose flight is boarding and late, let us know why. In addition, if a family of two is boarding a flight and an American who is traveling alone and sitting alone in a two-seater seat sees you, the American will gladly ask if both of you want to sit together and then opt to swap seats to make the family of two enjoy their company during the travel. So, if Americans are kind and could offer little kindness to strangers as above, why is touching people to help them is somewhat impossible? Let's look at another situation where touching could get one into trouble in America. You are standing in a line at a self checkout kiosk in a mall, and the person in front was busy fiddling his phone when almost all the kiosks were now available for the next customer. The person behind the guy fiddling his phone could not touch the guy in front, and the line had grown so long with people waiting. The person behind kept saying, "Sir, the kiosk is available," but the guy in front apparently did not hear it. Why is it a bad idea to touch the person to remind him? It is my understanding that some people might react in such a way that might lead to altercations and possible fatal outcome. What is it about reminder touch that so upsets Americans? In other countries, the people behind you will inform you verbally, and if it fails, will surely give you a gentle touch. It is important to know that the Same Americans who react angrily to touch is willing to allow people with few items in their cart to check out first, even though they might be behind in the line. Now, here is my logical take on this one. I would be glad to be touched if I was the person in the situation described. However, if you are new to America, be careful to not touch people to avoid getting into trouble. Since we still have some time, let's look at different situation that does not involve touching, but somewhat similar. There are some instances that could make a car to line up behind the one in front, such as the point of the red lights, or during a carpool in schools to pick up kids or something. Sometimes when the traffic light turns green, the driver of the first car at the point of the red light might be busy texting with his phone and did not know that the light had changed to green for over 60 seconds. And there was a long line of cars behind. The car behind never bothered to honk his horn to remind the car in front that the light is green, and the light turned back to red again. I will need someone to explain to me why a gentle honking is a bad idea. It is my understanding that some people have reacted with anger and attacked the driver of the car behind. In some instances, that led to injuries and fatal outcome. I've also learned to not honk for a car in front of me, but I don't even know the reason, but I know it will keep me safe. Other than the assumption that honking is annoying, we would like to hear from those who react against gentle honking in situations described above, so that we could better learn and educate people visiting America or new immigrants to America to avoid getting into trouble. Now, here is my take. If I'm the one in front and the light turns green, I'll be glad if the car behind me honks to remind me. Since it could lead to altercations and to potential fatal outcome, I think it is safe to not honk at the car in front to avoid getting into trouble. Let me end by saying this. I know that some of us are going through some difficult situations in our lives, and a little provocation unconnected to our problems or issues of life could trigger a bad reaction and sometimes could lead to misdirected aggression. I'm asking all of us to not react badly or angrily to a gentle touch or a gentle honk that is well meant and harmless, especially if it is meant to make life better for you and for everyone around you. If we all have considerations for each other, societies and the world at large will be a better place to live than what it is today. I thank you for taking time to listen to this podcast. I urge you to subscribe to the podcast and also to share this episode with your family and friends. Let us know if you would like to appear as a guest on our next episode, and we will accommodate you if time permits. We will take up another societal issue in our next episode. I will ask you to stay tuned. Goodbye.